I was kneeling on a floor that wasn't meant for knees. The metal beneath me was warm, softly pulsing like a living thing, and every breath I took tasted faintly of ozone and unfamiliar flowers. The guards had forced me down seconds ago, their long weapons humming inches from my neck. My heart slammed so hard I thought the alien queen would hear it echo through the hall. I should not have been here. I was a human logistics officer, a nobody, a translator who moved crates of words between species that barely tolerated each other. I had survived 3 border skirmishes by keeping my head low and my voice calm. That was my skill. Survival through silence. Now silence was impossible. The throne chamber rose around me like a cathedral carved from crystal and bone. Tall arches glowed with blue light. Banners of woven energy drifted in the air, each one carrying symbols I only half understood. Every alien eye in the room was fixed on me. And at the center of it all, above the living floor and the whispering lights, sat the alien queen. Queen Erin of the Virelian Dominion. I had seen images of her before, every human had. She was used as a warning in military briefings and as a threat in political speeches. Cold, ruthless, ancient, the mind behind 1,000 conquered worlds. None of the images were honest. She was tall, yes, with skin like pale silver and eyes too bright to look at directly for long. But there was something else there. Something painfully human in the way her fingers tightened on the arm of her throne, and the way her gaze lingered on me, not with hatred but with weight. Like she had been waiting. The guards barked an order in sharp Virelian tones. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the meaning. Don't move, don't speak, don't exist. The queen raised one hand. The room fell silent so fast it hurt. "Leave us," she said. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It slid through the chamber, calm and absolute. The guards froze. Every instinct in their bodies screamed no. Humans weren't supposed to be alone with her. Humans were barely tolerated at the edge of her empire. I saw one guard glance at another, fear flickering across his face. "I said," the queen repeated, her eyes never leaving mine, "leave us." One by one, they backed away. Weapons lowered. Doors sealed with a deep, resonant hum. The light dimmed until the chamber felt smaller, closer, like the walls were listening. I was alone with her. My mouth was dry. My hands shook despite my best efforts. I forced myself to breathe, to think like the survivor I had always been. She studied me for a long moment, not like a ruler judging a subject, like someone measuring a risk they were about to take. "You are afraid," she said. "Yes," I answered honestly. A flicker of something crossed her face. Amusement, maybe, or relief. "Good," she said. "Then you understand the weight of this moment." She rose from her throne. Up close, she was even more overwhelming. Power radiated from her in waves, not aggressive but immense, like standing too close to the ocean during a storm, beautiful, terrifying. "I know why you think you are here," she said. "You believe this is about treaties, borders, words exchanged to delay another war." I swallowed. That's what I was told. She stopped an arm's length from me. Her eyes searched my face with unsettling intensity, as if she could see every memory I had ever buried. "That is a lie," she said softly. My heart skipped. Then why am I here? For the first time since I entered the chamber, the queen hesitated. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter, stripped of ceremony, almost vulnerable. "Because," she said, "my empire is dying." The words hit harder than any weapon. Our stars are going dark. Our children are born weaker each cycle. Our future is collapsing beneath the weight of our own perfection. I stared at her stunned. No intelligence report had ever mentioned this. No rumor, no whisper. She lowered herself until we were eye level. "And you," she continued, "are here because humans survive what should kill them." I shook my head. "I don't understand." Her hand rose. For a terrifying second, I thought she would touch me. Instead, she stopped inches from my chest. "What I am about to ask you," she said, "will change your life. It may doom my people or save them." The room seemed to hold its breath. "Human," the alien queen said, "will you stand with me or let my empire fade into silence?" I opened my mouth to answer. And then she asked the question I could never have prepared for. The question hung between us like a blade. I didn't answer right away, not because I didn't want to, but because my mind had frozen. No training manual covered this. No survival instinct offered a clean path forward. Stand with her or let an empire die. "I'm just a human," I said finally. My voice sounded small in the vast chamber. "You have scientists, generals, entire councils. Why ask me?" The queen stepped back, giving me space, as if she understood how close I was to breaking. "Because none of them would tell me the truth," she replied. "And you already have." I frowned. "I haven't said anything." She tilted her head slightly, studying me again. "You did not beg, you did not threaten, you did not flatter me, you were honest about your fear." That wasn't a compliment I expected. She turned and walked slowly across the living floor. Each step caused soft ripples of light to spread outward, like water disturbed by rain. "Violins were bred for perfection," she said. "Strength, intelligence, control. We removed weakness from our bloodline long ago." I followed her with my eyes, afraid to move. "And in doing so," she continued, "we removed change." She stopped before a tall, translucent pillar. Inside it floated shapes that looked like stars trapped in glass. "Our people no longer adapt," she said. "We endure, we preserve, we repeat. But when the universe shifted, when the rules changed, we did not." I felt a strange tightness in my chest. "You're saying your species is stuck?" "Yes." She turned back to me. Her eyes softened just a fraction. "Humans are not." I almost laughed. It bubbled up before I could stop it. "With respect, Your Majesty, humans barely survive ourselves." A corner of her mouth lifted, a real smile, brief, dangerous. "Exactly," she said. She approached again, slower this time. Less like a queen, more like someone stepping onto fragile ground. "You fracture," she said. "You argue, you fail, you break, and yet you always change, you adapt. You endure chaos and somehow turn it into progress." I shook my head. "That doesn't mean we can save your empire." "No," she agreed, "but it means you might save me." The words hit harder than I expected. "Save her." Before I could respond, the doors at the far end of the chamber hissed softly. A ripple of tension passed through the room. I felt it in my bones. "Someone is coming," I said instinctively. Her expression hardened instantly. The queen straightened, power snapping back into place like armor. "They are early," she said. "Who?" "My council." The temperature in the room dropped. I had heard stories about the Viorlian High Council. Ancient minds, cold logic, no patience for humans. "They cannot hear what I have asked you," she said quickly. "Not yet." She stepped closer and did something that made my breath catch. She knelt. The alien queen of the Viorlian Dominion lowered herself until her eyes were level with my chest. Her head bowed slightly. "If they learn that I am uncertain," she whispered, "they will remove me." My pulse thundered. "Remove as in?" "As in erased," she said calmly. "My people value stability above all else." I stared at her, stunned. Then why risk this? She looked up at me, silver eyes bright with something raw and unguarded. "Because I am tired of watching my world die beautifully." The doors began to open. Voices echoed in the hall beyond, sharp and layered, speaking in rapid Viorlian tones. Authority, suspicion. She rose smoothly and turned away, every trace of vulnerability gone. "You will speak when spoken to," she said softly. "You will say nothing of what I revealed." "And after?" I asked. She glanced back at me over her shoulder. "After," she said, "I will ask you again, in a place where no one is listening." The council entered the chamber like a storm of shadows and light, tall figures draped in flowing energy cloaks. Their eyes snapped to me instantly. A ripple of disapproval passed through them. "A human," one of them hissed, "alone with the queen." I felt the weight of their gaze like hands around my throat. The queen returned to her throne, composed and distant. "This human," she said evenly, "is here by my command." The council murmured, but they did not challenge her, not openly. As they began their formal inquiries, their questions sharp and layered with hidden intent, I realized something terrifying. They were not just judging me. They were watching her. And beneath her calm exterior, I saw it again. That tension in her hands, that quiet fear. The mystery was no longer whether her empire was dying. It was whether she would survive long enough to save it. And whether I would be alive when she asked her question again. The council's questions were endless, each one a razor wrapped in silk. "How does a human expect to understand Virelian strategy?" one asked, voice sharp as fractured glass. "Do you not realize the danger of placing yourself so close to the queen?" another demanded. I kept my head low, my hands rested on my knees, trembling slightly. My throat was dry, but I forced words out in a steady, measured voice. "I am a translator. I understand context. I can learn your customs." A ripple of disbelief ran through the chamber. The council members exchanged looks, their expressions cold and calculating. It was clear. None of them trusted me, and the queen had only made things worse by letting me stand here. One of them leaned forward, long fingers drumming against a crystalline table. "You claim to understand context, yet you have never commanded fleets. You have never faced a dying planet. Explain to us how a mere human could save the Virelian Empire." I swallowed hard. This was a trap. Any misstep, any hesitation could be my end. But I had to try. "I do not pretend to hold all the answers," I said carefully. "But humans endure chaos. When all odds are against us, we survive. We adapt. I believe there is a way forward if I am allowed to see it, to learn it, and to try it." The chamber fell into silence. I could feel the council's collective judgment pressing down on me, their minds probing, testing. And then, unexpectedly, the queen's voice cut through the tension like sunlight through smoke. "That is enough." Every head snapped toward her. She stood, radiating authority, but also something fragile, something she had only just revealed to me in a whisper. "Your logic is sound," she continued, eyes scanning the council. "Yet more importantly, he is honest." The council members bristled. "Honest," one hissed. "A human is not meant for honesty. They are cunning, impulsive, unreliable." The queen's gaze swept over them, and the chamber went still. Not a single member dared interrupt. "He is human," she said. "And that is why I have chosen him. That is why he is here. That is why I must trust him where you would never." A shiver ran down my spine. Trust. The word alone carried weight I wasn't ready for. The council exchanged murmurs, whispers of dissent that didn't reach her ears. I wanted to shrink, to disappear, but something in her stare rooted me in place. Then the queen walked closer. Each step made the energy floor hum beneath her. She stopped beside me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from her body. "Do not be intimidated by them," she said softly, almost gently. "They see only tradition. They see only rules. You see what is possible." I wanted to say something, anything, but my words failed. My voice felt like it had been locked away behind steel. She smiled, a small, fleeting smile that seemed to carry both hope and sorrow. "Human," she said, turning to face the council again, "your role is not to argue with me. It is to learn, to adapt, to survive. And if he fails, then I have failed as well." The council glared, their outrage simmering beneath their composed faces. But the queen's command was absolute. They had no choice but to step back, at least for now. As they began to file out, one of them, the eldest, paused. His eyes, sharp and calculating, met mine. "This is temporary," he warned. "Do not think your position here is safe." I nodded, though my heart raced. Temporary, safe. Those were words humans clung to in the worst times, but here they felt meaningless. Once the last council member had left, the chamber emptied except for the queen and me. The lights dimmed slightly, the hum of the living floor softening. For the first time, it felt like the room was just the two of us. She turned to me, and I noticed the faint lines around her eyes. the marks of a ruler who had carried a universe on her shoulders for centuries. "You understand the risk," she said quietly. "If you fail, my people may die. If you succeed," she let the words hang, almost fragile. I understand," I said, my voice stronger this time, steadier than I felt. She studied me for a long moment. "Good," she whispered. "Then you must prepare. There is a journey ahead that will test you more than any battle you have ever faced." I nodded, trying to summon courage I didn't fully feel. "And human," she added, tilting her head slightly. "Do not think this is only about survival. It is also about trust." My stomach tightened. Trust from a being who had ruled worlds for centuries. It was more than I had expected. And then she said something I wasn't prepared for. "I hope you can teach me what it means to live." I froze, the words hung in the air, and I realized that the path ahead would not just decide the fate of her empire. It would test the very limits of my humanity and my heart. The chamber doors closed behind us with a low hum. Outside, the stars of the Virelian Empire waited, silent and cold. But inside, for the first time, I felt a spark of possibility. A spark that could either save everything or destroy us both. And I had no idea which it would be. The next morning, I awoke on a ship I didn't remember boarding. The walls were smooth and reflective, humming with quiet energy. I wasn't sure if I was dreaming or if the Queen had moved me while I slept. A soft voice broke my thoughts. "You're awake." I turned to see her standing at the doorway. She wore a traveling cloak that shimmered with shifting colors, almost like liquid silver. Her expression was calm but alert, eyes scanning the small cabin with precise awareness. "You came with me?" I asked, disbelief in my voice. She gave a faint smile. "You are to learn, human, and learning requires proximity." I swallowed, my stomach twisting. The enormity of what I had agreed to, or what I hadn't fully agreed to, hit me. This wasn't just about surviving a council interrogation. This was about walking beside an alien queen whose empire was crumbling, with the weight of billions pressing down on her shoulders. And somehow, she had chosen me to help. The ship hummed again, and I realized it was already moving. Through a viewport, I could see stars stretching and bending as we jumped through space. The universe was alive out there, vast and endless, and I was a small human at the center of it. "Where are we going?" I asked. "To the rim," she said. "There is a world at the edge of our territory. The colonies there are the first to fail. They will teach you everything you need to know about our people, about survival, and about adaptation." I nodded, though my hands were clammy. "And you, why do you need me there?" Her eyes softened just a touch. "Because humans see differently. You see hope where my people see logic. You see change where we see decay. And hope may be the only thing strong enough to hold an empire together." I blinked. Hope. It felt like an unfamiliar word in this cold, precise galaxy. The days aboard the ship passed in a blur of briefings, simulations, and quiet conversations. The Queen was an unexpected teacher. She asked questions I hadn't anticipated. About Earth, about humanity, about how I solved problems with nothing but instinct and stubbornness. She listened to my answers with intense concentration, sometimes nodding, sometimes frowning, always calculating. But at night, when the stars streaked past our windows and the ship was silent, I noticed a different side of her. The long lines of responsibility melted away, and she was just a being standing on the edge of despair, learning to trust someone smaller than herself. One evening, as we floated above a planet that glowed faintly like a dying ember, she spoke quietly. "Humans have something we lost long ago," she said. "Something precious, something fragile, something worth protecting even when the universe tells you to let it go." I looked at her, unsure if she was speaking to me or to herself. "And what is that?" I asked. "Life," she said simply. "In all its mess and chaos, you fight for it not because it is perfect, but because it is yours, and because it changes, it adapts, it survives." I felt a strange warmth in my chest. Her words weren't just about humans. They were about her, about the empire she carried, about the fragile hope she was entrusting to me. The next day, we descended into the colony. The landscape was harsh, cracked soil, weak vegetation, the skeletal remains of buildings that had once been vibrant. The settlers looked at us with suspicion, fear, and awe. Humans and Virelians alike, all caught in a web of decay and survival. "Observe," she said quietly as we walked among the failing colony. "Learn what it means to endure without guidance, to adapt without control." I nodded, taking in every detail, the way the settlers moved, how they scavenged and innovated, how they argued and reconciled in small, stubborn ways. It was nothing like the regimented life of the Virelians, nothing like the simulations I had trained for. And yet, despite the struggle, there was life, resistance, tenacity, a spark of something the Queen could not manufacture, no matter how much power she wielded. I realized then that she was watching me more than I was watching the colony. Her gaze followed me, searching, weighing. I caught a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes, like she was silently asking if I could carry the impossible. That night, as the twin moons rose over the dying planet, she approached me again. "Tomorrow," she said, "you will lead an initiative. You will try something no Virelian has dared, and you will see whether hope is enough." I nodded, unsure if I believed it. She placed a hand briefly on my shoulder. It was not regal, it was not commanding. It was human, almost intimate, and it made my stomach tighten. "Do not fail me, human," she whispered. I looked at her into eyes that held the weight of stars, of empires, of centuries. And for the first time, I felt that the fate of her world, and perhaps my own life, rested in my hands. The night stretched on, and somewhere between fear and determination, I realized that I had already begun to care, not just for survival, but for her. And that scared me more than anything else. The sun rose red and fractured over the dying colony. Tomorrow, everything would change. And I was terrified to see how. Morning came with a harsh red light spilling over the dying colony. Dust rose from the cracked ground, twisting in the weak breeze. I stepped outside, feeling every eye on me. The settlers, weary and exhausted, had gathered. Their lives teetered on the edge of collapse, and somehow I was expected to guide them. The Queen followed silently behind me, her presence both comforting and terrifying. The Virelian robes she wore shimmered faintly in the sunlight, shifting like liquid metal. I noticed the way her eyes scanned the horizon, not the sky, not the land, but every flicker of movement in the colony. She was calculating, always calculating. But beneath it, I saw something else, hope, or perhaps the desire for it. "This is your moment," she said softly, close enough for me to hear. "Show me what humans can do when the universe turns against them." I swallowed, my hands trembled, but I squared my shoulders. "We start with water," I said, louder than I intended. "The wells are drying. We need to dig new channels, create reservoirs, and filter what little we have left." The settlers blinked. Some looked skeptical, others curious. A young girl no older than 12 approached me timidly. "Will it work?" she asked. Her voice was small, fragile, yet there was a fire in her eyes. I knelt down to meet her gaze. "It has to," I said, "and we'll try together." The Queen observed quietly, her silver eyes focused on every movement. I could feel her tension, her unspoken question. Could a human truly guide an empire, even a small fragment of it, through this chaos? We began immediately. I organized groups to dig, to rebuild channels, to gather remaining water. I instructed them to innovate, repurpose broken machinery, patch torn pipes, and create makeshift reservoirs. I gave no commands steeped in fear or authority, only suggestions, encouragement, and trust. Hours passed. Sweat ran down my back. My hands were blistered, my arms aching, and yet slowly we saw results. Water trickled into the first reservoir. The settlers began to smile, their movements more confident, more coordinated. The Queen watched silently from the top of a ridge, her hands clasped behind her back. I noticed her expression soften in ways I hadn't seen before. The tight lines around her eyes eased slightly. She was invested, not just in the success of the colony, but in me. Then a sudden shout broke through the rhythmic sounds of digging. A pipe had collapsed, flooding part of the worksite. Panic rose immediately. Settlers screamed, scrambling to contain the water. I ran to them. "Stay calm, work together," I shouted, lifting debris, rerouting channels. The Queen followed without hesitation, using her presence to steady the workers, her voice firm but calm. We managed to control the flood, but it was exhausting. My body ached, my mind raced, and yet the Queen stood by me, watching, learning, and somehow trusting me. When the sun began to set, the first reservoirs were filled. Water glimmered in the red light like precious jewels. The settlers cheered quietly, cautiously, but with genuine relief. I turned to the Queen, expecting a nod of approval. Instead, she looked at me, her expression unreadable. "You did well," she said softly. "Better than I expected." I swallowed, not trusting my voice. "Thank you, Your Majesty." She tilted her head, a small smile flickering across her face. "You call me that too much. You sound afraid. There is no need here, not with me." I felt my chest tighten. Her words were strange, intimate, and terrifying in their honesty. I just don't want to fail." Her eyes softened, and for the first time I saw vulnerability openly displayed. "Then do not fail yourself," she said, "because the moment you stop believing in your own hope, the universe will swallow us whole." I nodded, though my heart raced. I had survived skirmishes, crises, and near-death moments before, but nothing had prepared me for this. The weight of an empire, of a queen's trust, rested on my shoulders. That night, under the twin moons, I found her standing alone on a ridge overlooking the colony. She looked at me when I approached, but did not speak. Finally, she said, "You are not like any human I have ever known. You fight with your heart, not just your mind. And that terrifies me." I blinked. "Terrifies you?" She nodded, "Because if you fail, if you succeed, either way, everything changes, including me." Her words lingered, heavy and electric. I realized then that this mission, this journey, was not just about survival. It was about transformation. I looked out at the colony below, the settlers beginning to rebuild with new energy. And I realized that for the first time in my life, I felt capable of more than survival. I could shape the future. And in that moment, I knew the Queen's challenge was far bigger than I had imagined. Not just about saving her empire, but about teaching her to hope again. The stars above twisted in strange patterns, silent witnesses to the fragile, beautiful chaos we were attempting to tame. Tomorrow, I would face another test. And I had no idea if I or she would survive it. The night was quiet, but it was a tense quiet. The colony slept fitfully, their exhaustion palpable in the cool air. I walked the perimeter, inspecting the newly dug channels, listening to the soft hum of water flowing through them. The Queen followed silently, her presence both comforting and unnerving. "You did well today," she said quietly, her voice almost a whisper carried by the wind. "Better than I dared hope." I shook my head. It was luck and them, the settlers. "No," she corrected, her silver eyes reflecting the twin moons. "It was you. You organized, inspired, led. You made them believe in something greater than fear. That is remarkable for a human." I looked down, my throat tight. Praise from her felt like a weight I could barely carry. "I'm still learning. I don't know if I can do this again." Her gaze softened. "Humans always underestimate themselves. I have watched your kind survive impossible odds without understanding why. That amazes me." I swallowed. There was something raw in her tone that made my chest ache. She was not just observing me as a leader. She was studying me, testing me in ways I couldn't yet name. A sudden rustle in the shadows made me stiffen. I spun around, heart hammering. Two figures emerged, moving quickly and quietly. "Queen Erin," one hissed, bowing low. "We must speak." The Queen's expression hardened instantly. "Now," she demanded. "Yes, Your Majesty," the figure replied, urgency in their voice. "It is about the Rim colonies and the human." My stomach twisted. I had a bad feeling about this. The Council had warned me indirectly there would be spies, dissenters, and hidden agendas, but I had not expected them to arrive here. The Queen nodded to me, silently instructing me to stay back, but my curiosity and instinct refused to obey. "I will not leave you alone," I said firmly. She raised a hand, the gesture both protective and commanding. "You will stay here. This is not your fight." But I couldn't move. My gaze stayed fixed on her as she followed the Council's emissaries into the shadows of the terrain. Minutes passed like hours. I heard their voices, low and urgent, in the alien tongue I only partly understood. The Queen's tone was sharp, commanding, and yet there were notes of frustration and fear. When she returned, her expression was unreadable. She approached me slowly, eyes narrowing slightly. "They have questions," she said. "Questions about you, about us." I swallowed hard. "What do they want?" "They want assurance," she said. "Assurance that trusting a human is wise, that you will not fail them or me." I looked down. "I don't even know if I can do it. I barely know myself in this situation." She studied me for a long moment, then sighed, a sound that was human in its exhaustion, foreign in its depth. "That is why I asked you, because uncertainty does not scare you into inaction. It makes you think, adapt, change." Her words hit me harder than any battle ever could. She was seeing in me the very thing her own people had lost: the courage to act despite fear, to survive despite odds, to hope despite despair. I looked up at her, my chest tightening. I will do my best." She stepped closer, so close that I could feel the warmth radiating from her. "Your best must be enough," she said softly, "because my empire and perhaps my life now rests in your hands." I nodded, unable to speak. The weight of responsibility pressed on me, heavier than any armor or weapon I had carried before. For a moment we stood there in silence, the twin moons casting our long shadows across the barren terrain. And in that silence, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just responsible for survival. I was responsible for trust, for hope, for teaching a being who had ruled stars for centuries to believe in something fragile, human, and chaotic, something she had almost forgotten. And I could feel her watching me, not just as a queen watches a human, but as someone watches a mirror of their own fragile courage. The night deepened. Somewhere in the colony, a child slept, unaware of the galaxy's precarious balance. And in the quiet shadows, I understood that everything, my life, hers, the fate of millions, was about to change. The question she had asked me, the question that no human should have heard, still hung between us. Would I stand with her? Or would I let her empire fade into silence? I didn't know yet. But I knew one thing. The next choice I made could decide the future of everything. And for the first time, I realized that hope alone might not be enough. The decision came at dawn. Not with a council vote. Not with a declaration of war. But with a quiet moment, when the sky above the rim colony shifted from black to deep violet, and the twin suns began to rise. I stood at the edge of the plateau, watching light crawl across broken land that was slowly learning how to live again. Behind me, I felt her before I heard her. The air always seemed to change when Queen Erin was near, like the universe was holding its breath. "You did not sleep," she said. "Neither did you," I replied. She stepped beside me. For a long time we said nothing. Below us, settlers were already awake. Humans and Violians worked side by side now, no longer separated by rank or fear. Someone laughed, someone else argued. Life, messy and imperfect, continued. The Queen watched it with an intensity that bordered on pain. "The Council will move against me," she said quietly. "They believe I am compromised, that I have allowed chaos too close to the throne." I turned to her. "Because of me." "Because of what you represent," she corrected. "Change." I nodded slowly. "They're afraid." "Yes," she said, "and fear makes my people cruel." The wind tugged at her cloak. For the first time since I had met her, she looked tired, not ancient, not powerful, just tired. "I brought you here to ask a question," she continued. "But the truth is, human, I was also asking myself one." She faced me fully now, silver eyes searching mine, not as a ruler, but as someone standing at the edge of everything she had ever known. "Can I let go?" she asked. "Can I allow my empire to become something uncertain, something alive?" My heart pounded. This was it. This was the moment that would echo across stars. I thought of Earth, of how humanity had survived floods, plagues, wars, and its own mistakes, of how nothing we built ever stayed perfect, and how that was exactly why we endured. I took a breath. "When you first asked me if I would stand with you," I said, I thought you were asking for loyalty. She did not interrupt. But that's not what this is, I continued. You're asking for permission to change, to fail, to risk becoming something new. Her jaw tightened, and will you give it? I looked back at the colony, at the water flowing through hand-dug channels, at the children chasing light between half-built shelters, at life refusing to die quietly. I can't save your empire, I said honestly. The words hit her like a blow. But, I added, I can stand with you while it learns how to save itself. Silence stretched between us. Then she did something no one would ever believe. Queen Erin bowed her head. Not in submission. In acceptance. Then tell me, she said, voice unsteady but clear. What does a human do when the old world no longer works? I smiled despite the weight of everything. We build a new one, I said, together, and we don't pretend it'll be perfect. She let out a soft sound that might have been a laugh, or a breath she had been holding for centuries. The council arrived an hour later. Ships descended like knives through the sky. The High Council stood before us, cold and furious, prepared to strip her of power and erase me from history. But the colony stood with us. Humans stepped forward. Virelians followed. Workers, engineers, children. Not soldiers, people. The council hesitated. For the first time in their long existence, logic failed them. Their perfect equations could not account for unity born from chaos. Queen Erin raised her voice. I will not rule an empire that fears life, she said. I will not preserve perfection at the cost of extinction. She looked at me once. I choose change. The council withdrew, not defeated but shaken, and that was enough. Later, as the stars returned to the sky, she stood beside me again. No throne, no guards, just a queen learning how to breathe. You stood with me, she said softly. Yes, I replied. And you did not kneel. No, I said, I stood. Her hand brushed mine, not an order, not a symbol. A choice. The Virelian Empire did not heal overnight. Some stars still went dark. Some worlds were lost. But others adapted. So did she. And as for me, I was no longer just a human translator. I became something else entirely. A bridge. A risk. A reminders. Because when the universe asked for perfection, humanity answered with hope. And when an alien queen asked a human to stand with her, he did.